doesn't make any promises like, oh, we're going to get, we're going to have joy progress today, or etc. He says we will get there. When he says it may not be next month, next year, or it might not be in this term, but then he gives that message of hope when he says we will get there. So it's hinting that we need to work together to get there. I feel he comes across as also someone who is sincere. That's what makes him likable. Back to you, Janice.
What about thank you for the insight, Raul. That was I think I've seen also the similar observations with how I think what I appreciated about what I share with you also is how he did not make very lofty promises.
Mhm.
I think that's a very important characteristic, particularly for political speeches,
Mhm.
where of course there's a tendency to promise the moon to people,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's also important to manage expectations because it can backfire on you later on. And I think what was very effective with what Obama said here was he rallied people to the vision that he was talking about, but he grounded that vision in a very realistic imagery of all of these wars happening, a financial crisis. So people were being inspired in spite of those problems. And that's a very grounded rallying cry, I think. And that was something Obama was very effective at. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tip Talks. We are on our first season, and this is the fourth episode. So I am Jan-Ace Mendoza, and I will be your moderator and host for this episode. So we'll start off with again a round of introductions for our panelists for tonight, and then I'll segue into what speech we're going to analyze for this episode. Let's start off with Paul.
Hello, everyone. Some of you know me as one of the hosts for Speakers Bureaus and their interviews. In addition, I just look at my face and the color of my hair. I've been working for almost 35 years now. I've been up and down the corporate ladder, been fired people. And before COVID, I was doing too many hours of training a year across all fields and working with all organizations, international, large, small, local. So that's essentially what I bring. Let's go with Raul.
Yeah, Raul.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Raul de la Vega. Uh, Usually, when I'm not with the Toastmasters program, or uh, or when I'm helping out at the Speakers Bureau, I'm at work where I am a corporate trainer for a business process outsourcing company, and I help individuals develop their communication skills so that they'd be able to uh, handle calls, queries from customers from the US, United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand. And that's about myself. I'm so delighted for today's session. Can't wait to also provide my insights for today's speech. On to you, Dino.
Oh, thank you, Raul. The short version of it is I'm the talent and social media director of the Speakers Bureau. I'm also a trainer, and I've been doing that since 1984. Hence the white hair or the lack of it. I'm also a speech consultant. So I coach individuals, executives, and I'm a Hall of Famer of the Toastmasters here in the Philippines. Back to you, Janice.
Right, and I guess it's my turn to introduce myself. I am Jan-Ace Mendoza, a Toastmaster also, and I am a public servant. I am a public servant. I work for the government as my day job. I work in the Philippine Congress, working in legislation and public policy. And I am passionate about analyzing speeches. And that's why all of us are here today. As you've seen in Tip Talks, we analyze famous speeches by famous individuals, and we look at really content, organization, delivery, objectives, and how well, and the lessons that we can get from these speeches as fellow speakers ourselves and anybody who wants to learn more about public speaking. So today we will be analyzing another speech from another famous individual, former President Barack Obama from the United States, his 2008 victory speech, which was the speech that he delivered right after he was announced as the president-elect of the United States. Now, this is a very significant speech in American history because it marked the election victory of the very first African American president in the long history of the United States. And it was probably as early as like 3 or 2 years before that actual victory. Nobody saw it coming. Obama was a relatively novice politician. He was a new senator. He was new at the national stage. So the victory was something that was very remarkable and was seen with a lot of promise because they were coming from the emergence of a financial crisis, two very costly wars in the Middle East, and a very unpopular president in George W. Bush. So this speech was delivered with the backdrop of challenges, but also a lot of hope. And that's the context of what we're trying to look into today. So we won't start off at the very beginning, the speech, but we'll start off with what we feel was the start of the meatier parts of the speech, because I think he spends around 3 or 4 minutes addressing and greeting other people, fellow competitors, and Joe Biden was his vice president at the time. So we'll start off around, I think, the 6 or 7 minute part of the speech, and then we'll go on and analyze and give our reactions. So let's start.
All right, here we go.
Centuries later, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people has not perished from the earth. This is your victory. Now, I know you didn't do this just to win an election. And I know you didn't do it for me. You did it because you understand the enormity of the task that lies ahead. For even as we celebrate tonight, we know the challenges that tomorrow will bring are the greatest of our lifetime. 2 wars, a planet in peril, the worst financial crisis in a century. Even as we stand here tonight, we know there are brave Americans waking up in the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan to risk their lives for us. There are mothers and fathers who will lie awake after their children fall asleep and wonder how they'll make the mortgage, or pay their doctor's bills, or save enough for their child's college education. There's new energy to harness, new jobs to be created, new schools to build, and threats to meet, alliances to repair. The road ahead will be long. Our climb will be steep. We may not get there in 1 year or even in 1 term, but America, I have never been more hopeful than I am tonight that we will get there. I promise you, we as a people will get there.
All right. Wow.
Wow, that was a very powerful opening to the speech. We could call it an opening. So what can you say about, I think this is the part where Obama really contextualizes where the speech is coming from. So what can you say about how Obama tries to get his audience into the speech and the context by which he talks about it here, how he contextualizes the speech?
Well, I'd like to offer my comments on that. No? I like how he starts off with a lot of enthusiasm, especially with his voice. And that's the kind of enthusiasm that gets the crowd pumping. And when he begins, he refers to that part of the Gettysburg Address, which which his whole audience is familiar with. I'm sure that during the times when these folks were still students, there must have been a time when they recited that in class, in their grade school class. So it's a good way of him connecting with the audience from And a third thing which I thought is good there, he doesn't make any promises like, oh, we're going to get we're going to have joy progress today, or etc. He says we will get there. When he says it may not be next month, next year, or it might not be in this term,
Mhm.
but then he gives that message of hope when he says we will get there. So it's hinting that we need to work together to get there. I feel he comes across as also someone who is sincere. That's what makes him likable. Back to you, Janice.
What about thank you for the insight, Raul. That was I think I've seen also the similar observations with how I think what I appreciated about when and what I share with you also is how he did not make very lofty promises.
Mhm.
I think that's a very important characteristic, particularly for political speeches,
Mhm.
where of course there's a tendency to promise the moon to people,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's also important to manage expectations because it can backfire on you later on. And I think what was very effective with what Obama said here was he rallied people to the vision that he was talking about, but he grounded that vision in a very realistic imagery of all of these wars happening, a financial crisis. So people were being inspired in spite of those problems. And that's a very grounded rallying cry, I think. And that was something Obama was very effective in doing. What about for Dino and Paul?
Paul?
Well, thank you, Dino. There are several things we can look at here in terms of structure. I like how he's starting with the situation. Okay, it's bad. Okay, that's what he's. That's the quickest way to describe it. But more importantly, what that taps into is, and this is a natural quality of humans. When they're in a desperate situation, they will look for a savior. It'll be just part of the thinking. You can go back into the Bible when the Jews were under the Egyptians for I don't know how many years. The story started floating that a savior will come. Of course, I mean, if you've been oppressed for that long, you start thinking that there will be a savior. And in a way, he picked up on that. Okay, because I still remember those years. It really looked bad. Okay, I think in 2008, the bank still had no idea how bad the situation was. It was still a black hole. Okay, so they really had no idea. So it was a time when it was bad and maybe he was desperate. So the way he started, he came up with a promise that we'll work really hard. That's one thing. The other thing, and I think this will carry throughout his whole speech, is if you listen to his voice, it's got a nice music to it. All languages have music, all of them do, but his music sounds really nice. If you listen to it, it really goes up and down. He always ends down very quickly and then he picks up. So it's a nice sound. It really, really sounds nice. Over to you, Dino.
I'd like to concur with what Paul said in terms of vocal dynamics. Barack Obama really has it. He has that unique ability to inspire confidence in the people who hear his voice. It doesn't have to be a visual medium. You could just be listening to him and yet be carried by his optimism. I also like the fact that when he, as Raul pointed out, referred to the speech given by Abraham Lincoln, he was in effect saying that my standing here today is the fulfillment of that dream, the same dream that our other speaker from the previous episode also had, Martin Luther King, who had a dream. And w- another thing that I'd like to say is I'm with you in that I would never in my life have expected somebody with the name Barack Obama to have won, to have climbed so fast. Because in my mind, when you talk about an African American politician, it's Jesse Jackson has always been in the media, has always championed the cause, left and right. So When I thought about who might just make it all the way to the White House, I would have thought him. But then Barack Obama went all the way to the top, and I must say that I don't mind. I don't mind at all. He is such a calm and reassuring voice that we need to hear. We needed to hear at that time. Back to you, Janice.
I agree. You know, and it's interesting that we've noted how he practically came out of nowhere
Yeah.
because, and it's his rise to the national stage in the United States was in no small part because of how good he was as a speaker.
Mm.
I think it was this one speech in a Democratic National Convention that really catapulted him nationally into the national scene. So these qualities that we're seeing now in this speech really are something that he has had throughout his career, and it only took that one event for them to be able to notice. Right. So let us move on to the next parts of this.
Roger that.
There will be setbacks and false starts. There are many who won't agree with every decision or policy I make as president. And we know the government can't solve every problem. But I will always be honest with you about the challenges we face. I will listen to you, especially when we disagree. And above all, I will ask you to join in the work of remaking this nation the only way it's been done in America for 221 years. Block by block, brick by brick, calloused hand by calloused hand. What began 21 months ago in the depths of winter cannot end on this autumn night. This victory alone is not the change we seek. It is only the chance for us to make that change. And that cannot happen if we go back to the way things were. It can't happen without you, without a new spirit of service, a new spirit of sacrifice. So let us summon a new spirit of patriotism, of responsibility, where each of us resolves to pitch in and work harder and look after not only ourselves but each other. Let us remember that if this financial crisis taught us anything, it's that we cannot have a thriving Wall Street while Main Street suffers. In this country, we rise or fall as one nation.
Okay, I think I saw Jan-Ace raise his hand.
All right. Yeah. So here we see him transition into really trying to talk about, I think, his what some actionable points that he wants the people to have, and some the use of imagery,
Yeah.
brick by brick, with callous hands, and looking at using when the seasons to be able to illustrate how long the journey has been.
Mhm.
So, what are the thoughts? What are the group's thoughts on how Obama was able to use these elements in this particular part of the speech?
Perhaps I'll start off this time. I liked how visceral his speech is at this part of the a point in time, because when you talk about those things, you make the average listener realize that this is a journey that we take seriously and that it's not going to happen overnight, but it will require cooperation. It will require collaboration. This is not an effort alone by just one person or one party, because I like the part where he said something about especially for those who may not agree with me, his openness to listen. See, and so this part, I think he does much to reassure everyone on either party that this is not a time for recriminations or a time for saying we're better and you're not, but this is a time to work together, to pull together. So that's why I like this part a lot. Jan-Ace.
Right. That's true. I liked how you pointed out the how he addresses people from both sides of the aisle. It goes back to what we were pointing out earlier about being able to be realistic. I think it connects to that because he also is able to manage expectations not just from his supporters but people from the opposite party, and that's really important, particularly in terms of political messaging, because there is a tendency for some politicians, and it always backfires on them, to just dismiss complaints and to
Mm.
just dismiss criticism, and to be able to say something along the lines of, I will listen to you, especially when we disagree.
Mm.
That is a very powerful statement of reassuring your constituency that, hey, I am your president regardless of what you think about me. I am your president regardless of whether or not you voted for me. Yeah.
Mm.
So about Paul or Raul?
All right. Well, I like how he comes across as realistic and honest
Mm.
at the start, where he says, there are going to be setbacks, false starts. He mentions already the challenges that that can be expected. But later on, he talks about what can be done. We need to have a new spirit of patriotism. Let's work harder. We need each other. So, in following something like, okay, a problem, a solution approach, he shows how he has thought about things and is ready to offer a solution. He just doesn't leave the problem as it, and then he says, look, there's hope here, and this is what we need to do. So it
Mm.
goes to show him as a leader. Back to you, Janice.
Right. I think that also is a very effective way of him really talking about his theory of change.
Mhm.
It's that one small image, that particular part of the speech where he says, we cannot have a thriving Wall Street if, or something along the lines of, we cannot have a thriving Wall Street without the benefits going to Main Street.
Mm.
And that really just shows the small aspiration that he wanted to see that was very relevant for that time because of the financial crisis.
Mm.
And I think that really resonated with his audience. Paul?
Uh, what I liked again, and this also started with the first part that we listened to, is the imagery. He talked about calloused hands. In the first part, we were talking about putting our kids to sleep. These are all things that everyone can relate to, literally everyone. But what's interesting about this speech, especially the part where he says, "I will listen to you even though I disagree with you." I think he knew already because within the first year or first few months, Mitch McConnell literally said that whatever you propose, will disagree with.
Wow.
Yeah, he did. He said it publicly. Okay, so no matter how good an idea that the Democrat Party would propose, the Republicans would disagree. Okay, so in short, I think he already kind of knew.
Mm.
I mean, he would have known by then what he was running into. Okay, and the headwinds that he would have to face, and maybe he was already reaching out to the Republican Party. Hey guys, we got to work on this together. And the thing about reaching Main Street, the 2008 for me was a culmination of just to prove that trickle down economics doesn't work.
Mm.
Okay. And it was reaching that point. It was still, hey, trickle down, but it just was not working.
Mm.
Okay. And maybe that also spoke to that because that was a policy that I think was started with Reagan in the 80s.
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
was Reaganomics.
Mm.
Yeah, Reaganomics is
Yeah.
trickle down plan. So if you look at it in context, in that context, he's also talking about some very powerful things that were going on other than the crisis that had just happened. Back to you, Janice.
I think that's also an interesting point to make in terms of how Obama was able to contextualize his speech, because that idea of trickle down economics was the long-standing policy of the opposite party, which was the Republican Party. So it's just a subtle way of saying also that we are not going to go about things. We're not gonna. It's not gonna be just business as usual for us.
Right.
I am going to introduce some. We are going to introduce something new, but we are going to do it in a way that again is grounded in the realities that we face today. Right. Let's listen to the rest of the speech.
Okay.
As one people, let's resist the temptation to fall back on the same partisanship and pettiness and immaturity that has poisoned our politics for so long. Let's remember that it was a man from this state who first carried the banner of the Republican Party to the White House, a party founded on the values of self-reliance and individual liberty and national unity. Those are values that we all share. And while the Democratic Party has won a great victory tonight, we do so with a measure of humility and determination to heal the divides that have held back our progress. As Lincoln said to a nation far more divided than ours, we are not enemies, but friends. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. And to those Americans whose support I have yet to earn, I may not have won your vote tonight, but I hear your voices. I need your help, and I will be your president too. And all those watching tonight from beyond our shores, from parliaments and palaces, to those who are huddled around radios in the forgotten corners of the world, our stories are singular, but our destiny is shared. And a new dawn of American leadership is at hand. To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we proved once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals: democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope.
All right.
All right. So I wanted to pause here because I think at this portion, Obama shifts to a different audience. So how do you think Obama differentiates or transforms the context of what he's saying now for not the audience that he has in the crowd or the Americans, but he's now looking at people who may be watching from outside the country. Maybe
I'll start.
Paul,
I'll start.
yeah.
Well, let's take it just a step further backwards. Even before he talks about people outside of the United States, he talks about the other party. He talks about the Republicans. He doesn't say it directly, but he tells, hey, look, we got to work on this together. We've been fighting, blah, 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 blah. He says a lot of that, but he's also talking directly to them at that point. Okay, to the Republican Party. Then he shifts over to the international scene. And it was just a simple shift. To those of you who are watching this, in other parts of the world, he just did a very simple but effective shift to other parts of the world. And I didn't quite grasp it, but I like the line about having a shared destiny. That I liked. Okay. Again, this is historically speaking and understanding what else was going on at that time. He talked about tearing down peace. Okay, for those of you who want to tear down peace, I think he was talking about the terrorists at that time. They're still chasing, what's his name? Osama. Okay, and there was still a big thing. In fact, that's why they were in Afghanistan, I think. One of the reasons why. But anyway, I'm not sure. But the terrorism was a big thing, was like their common enemy, if you want to say, at that time. And I'm pretty sure he was referring to them when he said, to those of you who want to tear it down. Over to you, Janice.
Yeah, I think that was they chased Al Qaeda, and then they were
Yeah,
chasing the Iraq War, Saddam afterwards. So
I also had
yeah,
that.
so there were like a lot of the war on terror was the thing back then
Was the thing,
internationally.
yes.
Yeah,
All right.
what I also noted from this particular portion is in terms of talking to in the international audience, and he begins to shift to emphasizing universal American values. So these are, instead of talking about things that were products of their time, which were the elements he introduced to the speech in the earlier parts of the speech. He talked about general American values that were seen as timeless, or unity, patriotism, and resilience in spite of the changes that were happening in society at that time. And I found that to be a simple but very clever way of being able to have a much more uniting message for everybody. Because coming from addressing the Republicans, as Paul pointed out, you now had to send this message that, hey, we are all Americans and we need to be able to stand united in spite of the changes that are happening globally. So I felt that that was a subtle, simple way of really emphasizing unity among their countrymen, their constituents.
Mm.
Uh, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to say that, Jenny, is that in this portion of his talk, he begins to speak not just to the people who were in the audience that night, but to the world. When he specifically begins to address those who were part of the GWOT, or GWOT, Global War on Terror, the servicemen who served abroad, he was offering them support, hope. And for those who were responsible for causing that war to persist, he was giving them a stern warning. And I love the way that he just made the enduring values that is America a reminder to the rest of the world that, I'm not just here winning this victory for the African American. I'm here winning this election for everybody, everyone on the planet, which to me is not only magnanimous, but really gives him that quality of vision, of a very clear vision, which is refreshing. Back to you, Janice.
That's true. It's something that really shows his characteristic as a leader,
Mm.
and also that sternness. I think Dino is something that was in contrast to how he was speaking before that. There's the language is a bit nuanced when he wanted to talk to rather the Americans, but when he started talking to uh, terrorists or the actors in the war on terror, he it was very straightforward and stern. And
Mm.
that also was a projection, I think, that, hey, of course, I will work towards healing, I will work towards change, but I can also be strong. I can also be strong, and I can also defend you when I need to defend
Mm.
you. Any thoughts, Raul?
Yeah. Yes, I like how he still shows humility in his presentation. So when he says something like, I may not have won your vote, but I need your help. Okay.
Mm.
And I know he was addressing this to the folks on the Republican side. So it's a call for teamwork. That kind of tone makes shows him not only as a leader, but of course willing to get others involved so that the nation can get started into progress. Back to you,
All right.
Jan-Ace.
Okay. So let us continue listening to the rest of the speech.
That's the true genius of America, that America can change. Our union can be perfected. What we've already achieved gives us hope for what we can and must achieve tomorrow. This election had many firsts and many stories that will be told for generations, but one that's on my mind tonight is about a woman who cast her ballot in Atlanta. She is a lot like the millions of others who stood in line to make their voice heard in this election, except for one thing. Ann Nixon Cooper is 106 years old.
Wow.
She was born just a generation past slavery, a time when there were no cars on the road or planes in the sky, when someone like her couldn't vote for two reasons: because she was a woman and because of the color of her skin. And tonight, I think about all that she's seen throughout her century in America: the heartache and the hope, the struggle and the progress, the times we were told that we can't, and the people who pressed on with that American creed: yes, we can. At a time when women's voices were silenced and their hopes dismissed, she lived to see them stand up and speak out and reach for the ballot. Yes, we can. When there was despair in the Dust Bowl and depression across the land, she saw a nation conquer fear itself with a new deal, new jobs, a new sense of common purpose. Yes, we can. When the bombs fell on our harbor and tyranny threatened the world, she was there to witness a generation rise to greatness and a democracy was saved. Yes, we can. She was there for the buses in Montgomery, the hoses in Birmingham, a bridge in Selma, and a preacher from Atlanta who told the people that we shall overcome. Yes, we can. A man touched down on the moon. A wall came down in Berlin. A world was connected by our own science and imagination. And this year, in this election, she touched her finger to a screen and cast her vote. Because after 106 years in America, through the best of times and the darkest of hours, she knows how America can change. Yes, we can. America, we have come so far. We have seen so much, but there's so much more to do. So tonight, let us ask.
Wow. Again, wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Well, probably one of the most compelling parts of the speech. Dino, what have you
I
started off?
I loved how he used the lens of this lady's eyes, to see the world through her eyes. 106 years old, and to review history as it unfolded through the years, to really evoke in us the achievements that America and the world has gone through. It was wonderful how he connected everything from Abe Lincoln to Martin Luther King, to this dedicated woman's willingness to hope for a better future. And the best part is, I noted how he was able to build up the soundbite, the "Yes We Can" motto, all throughout what he was saying. From time to time, he would say, "Yes, we can," and then the crowd started to repeat it after him. Uh, Whoever his speechwriter was or uh, is a very talented person, because like any good song, you need a refrain. You need that phrase that will stick in your mind. Apart from touching the emotions, it's giving you something to remember, to say, and an attitude that yes, you can. Back to you, Janice.
It's really just I think a stroke of genius, that whole part of that speech. Uh, I think I'm reminded of like how we often talk about in Toastmasters the value of including stories
Yeah.
and storytelling, and that was done perfectly here. It helped personalize everything that he was talking about before that. The idea of change, the idea that you are part of this change and you can witness this change. How about the others?
Well, I'm no, yes, I agree with Dino when Barack Obama references important points of history from elements that took place during the Civil War until the time, okay, World War II, and then the time when segregation had happened in America, those issues. He noticed that when he gives reference to those historical events, he's very concise about it. So such that he's able to talk about these historical events in just one sentence.
Yeah.
uh, which is very important in making any presentation. Uh, well, I can imagine others, if they were to refer to a historical event, they'd probably take about 2 paragraphs. But with Barack Obama, he takes just one sentence, and then he covers at least 4 or 5 historical events in chronological order. This kind of research that he includes in his speech adds to his credibility. Okay. Back to you, Jan-Ace.
I liked how you pointed out, Raul, the brevity that
Yeah.
Barack Obama had in that particular portion of the speech. I didn't I wasn't able to appreciate that until you mentioned it. And it's not easy to be able to capture such complex points of history into those bite-sized sentences, but to string those together and to capture world changing events in those short sentences to make them very compelling, I think was one of the strokes of genius of this particular speech.
Mhm.
Paul?
Actually, to build up on everything you've said, that part about brevity, that can only be achieved because he started with the 106-year-old lady. Okay, because while he said, I'm seeing it through her eyes, if I just tell you I'm looking at a 106-year-old lady, you don't only see the eyes, but you also see to quote a famous song, you also see the generations of love on her face. Okay, so automatically all the how would you say, all the wrinkles and all the facial expressions of a 106-year-old person, you can see all the generations just by looking at the face. And that allowed, by using that, he set up the ability to talk about all those generations in one sentence. Okay, so that's for me, that was a key turning point. And when Raul pointed out that, hey, look, he did it in one sentence, yes, awesome. And that's also because he started with a very powerful image that I think all of us can relate to. That when we look at a person who's 106 years old, we see generations of hardship, of love, of hope, of joy, all in just the face, even without looking at anyone. It's already in our it's already in our imagination. Back to you, Jan-Ace.
Oh, I also, I mean, that's a great insight. Something that I also wasn't able to appreciate earlier. I think it's really powerful and effective when you're able to look at these big concepts from the lens of an individual. It really helps ground lofty concepts like change, transformation, and all of these developments in the world that Obama was talking about. And I think also in any speech, when you try to look at it from the lens of people, ordinary people, it really helps personalize and make a speech much more compelling. I think we saw that in this particular story of this 106-year-old lady. All right, let us proceed to, I think, some of the last parts of the speech.
That's right.
Ask ourselves, if our children should live to see the next century, if my daughters should be so lucky to live as long as Ann Nixon Cooper, what change will they see? What progress will we have made? This is our chance to answer that call. This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids, to restore prosperity and promote the cause of peace, to reclaim the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one, that while we breathe, we hope, and where we are met with cynicism and doubt and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
Wow.
Wow. Well, yes, we can.
It's so funny that uh, 3 times he caused us to say wow.
Well,
That's
that's
got
what
to
you
be there.
get when you get a great speech and a
Mm.
great orator.
Yeah.
It
That's
came
true.
together. You know what I mean? It was just amazing. I think before Raul joined us, we are just discussing even before we started. When you listen to Obama, the one thing I really appreciate about him is he makes you feel important.
Mm.
And if you listen to that whole speech, he made everybody feel important. It wasn't just about him. Okay, and for me, that's really one of the key. How do you say? It's a key strength
Mm.
when you deliver speeches. If you can make the other people feel important. Okay, so it's really it's something. It's a quality of his voice. I don't know what to say. It's just how he puts it all together.
Mm.
Yeah,
How about you guys?
yeah. I guess we can share our final thoughts about the speech.
Mm. I'd like to say that of all the U.S. presidents I've ever heard give a speech, and there have been many U.S. presidents who've given really wonderful speeches. I think of Roosevelt, who gave his the Day of Infamy speech, which was pretty good as well, or Jack Kennedy, giving his speech about men going to the moon, or Ich bin Berliner. Uh, so there have been many great speakers, but I think the one defining quality that Obama has, especially towards the end of his speech, is that quality of approachability. Notwithstanding that you probably have to get an appointment, if somehow you could get one to meet with him, that if he just didn't have all those Secret Service guys surrounding him, if he just didn't have to live in the White House, that if you met him across the road, you could cross the road, say hello, and then shake hands with him, and he'd have a conversation with you. That's the way he came across to me. The accessible, approachable leader. Back to you, Janice.
Right. The final thoughts from Raul before I also give my inputs.
All right. I like how he concludes quickly
Hmm.
in his speech. No, uh, it's not like other speeches where the conclusion is rather lengthy. No, in his conclusion, he talks about, okay, uh, future which the next generation uh, can can appreciate, because we'll be more prosperous, it will be peaceful, and we will find unity. So, and then after that, he ends. So he lets us know the benefit if we unite. And when he says this is our moment, so it's like telling me, let's act now. So I'd say it's a very concise and effective conclusion. Back to you, Janice.
All right. Thank you for everyone's thoughts. I think in summary, we are all in agreement that, as Paul pointed out, Barack Obama is both a great orator and you have a great speech, or whoever the speechwriter is behind Barack Obama. And this particular speech, I think this is one of those speeches where it really showed how good of a combination those two are. And really, this is a masterclass, I think, in terms of political communication, and well, great great communication in general.
Mhm.
And it shows how one should carry themselves as a dignified statesman. And that's a great example of how a statesman should act. And on a more personal note, really, I heard the speech probably, around the same time that he won in 2008. And I think a testament to how good of a speech it is. I still even if I didn't rewatch it recently, I would still remember that portion about the 160-year-old lady.
Mm.
I mean, I remember it vividly. I keep on telling my friends about it when they ask me to share like speeches that I like. And it goes to show how a powerful speech can really remain in someone's memory and can impact somebody. And Barack Obama is really a testament to how a powerful speaker can really make an impact in society and, well, on more personal lives. All right. So that concludes our analysis for Barack Obama's speech. And for our we look forward to joining for you guys to join us and again on our next episode, and give the floor to Paul, who would talk to us about what we should expect next.
Thank you, Jan-Ace. And to all our viewers, if you enjoyed this, we encourage you to submit people who you'd like to be analyzed, people who've given speeches. It could be somebody famous, somebody infamous, all right, because there have been several infamous speakers who are also powerful orators. It's just that because their message was destructive, they were forgotten. Okay, but it doesn't disqualify them from being a poor orator. Okay, so we can include those as well. And if you really enjoyed this, please don't forget to subscribe and like at the bottom. So next episode, we'll actually be looking at President Cory Aquino in her speech to the U.S. Congress in wait, I got this, 1987, if I'm not mistaken. It was also a very powerful speech. It was also a very well-timed speech, just like Obama's speech. And as always, let's all remember, learning is a never-ending journey with limitless vistas.